Oh yeah, how do I see the chat?
If you go to, if you sign into Mickey and Bill and go to youtube.com and then go to Creator Studio, you can see it. And I think we are live.
Okay. Oh wow. Is there anybody with
yet,
us?
But I don't know how to start the other event, so I'm going to get the link for this one. So.
Okay. So should I be using the link sent out?
No, if you want to. Well, I mean, you can use that. It's going to be a little bit delayed, so it might be weird.
Oh. What is it that I should be doing so that I can see what people are saying? Say that again. I have to go to YouTube and sign in.
Yep.
Us. I think I'm going to use a different browser for that, just so that. All right. Use another account.
Link.
I don't even think I remember our password.
Do not say it, because we are live right now.
I know. Right. Can you like message it to me or something?
Yeah, I'll figure that out. In the meantime, I'm going to post it up in the Facebook. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I can just... Yeah, so there's the weird delay. But other than that...
Oh, yeah, that's going to be problematic.
Hold on, let me turn the volume off there.
Yeah.
No, it's just us. Nobody loves us.
It's weird because we have an event scheduled, so like... Okay, so it does say live now. So I think we're good.
Yeah, well, I looked at... I haven't signed in as Mickey.
Did you use the old link or the new link?
As my regular... The new link
works.
I was about to say, because if we just gave everybody a not working link before, that feels like a problem. That is a problem, yeah, because it's waiting. And there's 7 people subscribed.
Alright, I posted something on the chat and the other one, so giving people the link.
Give people a few minutes and then...
Yeah. Did you bring an adult beverage for this one, Mickey?
I did not.
Do you need to go get an adult beverage now?
I don't think I have one, sadly.
God, you are a robot.
Yeah. I'm a robot? Just spread that info around a little bit more. You had me give everybody the wrong info.
I also did it, so there is that. Oh, we got some people.
Hey, sweet.
Hey guys, due to the technical difficulties, we're gonna take like 5 minutes to start the stream, but feel free to start dropping questions if you want. We'll answer them and then we'll start in earnest at say 10 after.
I'm just gonna sit here and look contemplative. Actually, mostly I'm trying to figure out, because I've got it up on this monitor over here. Oh, there's participants. Hey, now I can see who's in here. Who is
I
in
don't know.
here that
It
you
just says
see?
two watching now. That's all.
Yeah, that's participants is. Oh, that's me and you, isn't it?
Maybe, I don't know.
Pop out the chat.
Yeah,
I don't
we
know
could
if
just
there's
be talking
anybody
to
here,
ourselves.
because participants is just Larpcast. I think we
It's
might be
very
just talking to
possible.
ourselves right now. Oh, for the love of God, damn it. There we go. How about that? Mm-hmm. There we go. All right, there we go. I couldn't copy paste we have a new link announcement because of the way it cropped the link and rendered it invalid. Hey, all right, no, just I was like somebody chatted. It was you. Although now it says 3 people are watching, so you'd think having done this for like 6 or 7 years, I'd be a little bit more savvy than I am, but apparently not. All right, shall we get started?
Yeah, we'll
Or
do 2
not 2
minutes.
more
I'm trying
minutes.
to figure out. YouTube doesn't like something, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix it.
Oof. Somebody put together a video of people doing crazy stunts, intercut with people trying what is essentially the same stunt right at
Oh yeah.
and failing. Like, it's pretty brutal. It's people are awesome versus fail army, and it's kind of tough to watch because like you see somebody do something amazing, and then you see somebody do a version of it and clearly gonna break some limbs there. And then, of course, when you see the first one and it's extra ridiculous, you know the next one's going to be really, really painful.
It really doesn't like our video settings, and I'm not sure how to change them.
What is that? Does that screw with our recording?
I think it makes it so that it buffers more, which is not ideal, okay. But if we get too many issues, we'll figure out how to do this.
Okay.
Alright. Hopefully that fixes it. I did something. It might fix it. We'll see if we keep getting this.
Gotcha. Hopefully people realize where the link is. I think all the people who subscribed probably clicked and then
I put something in the chat there. I hope it's visible.
Is there a way to trigger it just long enough for people to get a notification so they check?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't know how these things work. All right.
Let's start it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. You ready? All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Larpcast, a podcast about live-action role-playing and all that goes with it.
I'm Bill Tobin, and today we're going to be talking about Larpcast itself and taking Q&As. In our live episode that is so far does not have a lot of people following it, so hopefully more people show up.
Yeah. And our apologies to anybody who, had every intention to. There was a little technical glitch, so we had to change links on exactly where to go kind of last minute. So we posted them up, but totally understand if they weren't easy to see. But we are talking, we're going to talk about the episode. We're going to kind of reminisce a little bit. We've now been doing this for a pretty good chunk of time. And it's been actually, a good year and how long has it been? Let's see. Since we made our recommitment, has it been a year, half a year? I've lost track of time because I had a baby. That excuse will go for a while. But the every 2 weeks thing, which has frayed a little, but we're getting back to it now, and has been going for a while with Patreon. We've been doing that for a while, and I like it. So we have some stuff to talk about. First and foremost, is I believe we have a little bit of a musical announcement.
Yes,
Mr. Tobin.
We did find what we think is music. We have to get permission from the musician for it, but I think we're going to be using a song from Caravan Palace called Dramaphone, which, if they give us permission, many props to them, and obviously we'll be giving them shout-outs every episode for letting us use that music. So,
yeah. That's a pretty cool little song, and decided that we wanted something that we could just ramble about this particular episode, and we decided to talk about what have we learned doing this. Do we have favorite moments or favorite episodes? Do we have stuff that we're not so proud of? What might be coming down in the future? Any other project? Yeah, so we're just going to chat a little bit about. We're going to navel gaze for a while, and just go with that. So maybe this isn't the most LARP staffing insightful one, but maybe a little bit interesting for people who do their own podcasts or are thinking about it. So let's start with some favorite moments and stuff like that. I don't know if you have any
I was looking through
already,
and I was
Bill?
trying to figure out which ones I thought were particularly good. I guess in the past year, one of the ones that stands out to me is obviously the interview with Rob Ciccolini. That was a big one. I thought that I knew everything that there was to know about LARP, and he kind of blew my mind on that one.
Yeah, that was kind of fun because you have this thing. You're asking him some questions. You get his opinion. You're talking about this and talking about this, and then there's a moment where Rob's like full geek brain engages. Right, like if you listen to that episode, there's suddenly a switch over, and that's when he starts going into all the core combat exchanges and all this sort of deep rules thought that nobody ever does, right? He's thinking about things in a way very different than I think most rules people have ever spoken to in decades. So I'm with you. That was, I think, a really awesome moment. For anybody who's actually shows up live and you see me looking off there, I have another monitor, which is where I'm keeping my notes. I think that was definitely a highlight.
What about you? Because I picked one.
I'm trying to look at our list.
Pick one.
Yeah, I'm picking one. Let's see. I'm going to say conflicts of interest. That to me is kind of a favorite. That episode, I'm going to just say the episode as opposed to a particular moment in it, because for me that was very ranting about stuff that gets to me sometimes, right?
Is that just
and that one is just full of that. No, I mean some episodes are, I can't get, I don't know. Weapon. So for example, so we had Ben on, right? We had Ben Becker, and that was a really good episode, and I was really glad to have him there. But I'm never going to rant about weapon construction the way I'm going to rant about conflicts of interest and double dealing and self-interested crap, and all of that is going to always get to me way more than prop construction, right? So I really enjoyed that episode, though. As I'm saying it, I'm realizing probably one of my top 3 episodes was the one about quitting LARPs. I think that is probably the one we've gotten the most props for over the years, and that one I think has me really ranting. I lose it at some point in there, so but I felt like that was one of the more important ones we've ever done, just because of how many people play LARPs and feel such an obligation to keep going despite just epic levels of misery that they're experiencing. So for me, that one I think it had all the things I love, a topic I care about, some hopeful and meaningful impact on the community, and getting to, stomp around, rant and rave and yell. So I was a big fan of that one.
Now, I know that this is sidetracking a little bit, but that's fine. In case you're not familiar with the podcast, a lot of our topics are kind of just based on things that happen to us. We keep asking for topics, and I would say about half of ours are from topic questions that we get. But most of the time, it's just whatever's bugging us at the moment, or whatever we think is appropriate. We've done a lot more guests,
pretty much,
like in the past 20, 30 episodes than we did in the beginning. Well, in the very beginning, we had
yeah,
a bunch of guests in maybe the first 10 episodes, and then we didn't have guests for 3 years, something like that.
Yep. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, because guests are a great topic. It's there is so much to LARP, and so I feel like there's an infinite number of things to talk about, but we're also super busy and don't maybe have the time to think of all the little things to make us. So we're sitting there. So a guest is kind of an easy way to have a conversation, and I know that I'm a sublime genius whose words are coated with golden honey at all times, and Bill, you are a magnificent specimen of a LARP human and all, but I imagine that people probably want to hear some other voices periodically, and people have different viewpoints. We had, what was it, Adina came on for to talk about a kind of LARP that
Yeah.
I have very little experience with. I can't make anything. Let's be clear. I have no ability to take any kind of raw material and turn it into any kind of finished good, whether that's props or weapons or cooking. Like I can't. I have no practical skills. So, you have somebody on like Ben on, and now you're having a conversation with somebody who actually knows what the hell they're talking about. Whereas I got nothing, So it's, I think, a useful perspective, but it is a kind of a nice way for us to be able to be like, okay, who's available? Cool. What kind of thing would they like? Luke was a great example. Luke had the topic idea, and then we're like, I want you to come on the show and talk to us about it. And that way we kind of, life's a little easier.
Yeah.
So, so let's see. Kind of think about, we got some people with us. So welcome, welcome everybody. There's kind of a funny delay. If you are in the chat and you type a question, one, there's a little bit of a delay before we see it, but please do it. And two, that means there's also a delay, like between us, you showing up and us noticing that you're there. So, hello to the past.
All right. So I got a question for you, Mickey. It's been over 6 years since we started this.
Lord,
obviously, I think early on we talked a fair amount about like gamist theory, like the three different types of gaming, whether you're like simulation.
Oh,
the
the GNS, gamist, narrativist, simulationist.
So I'm trying to think back to where we were when we started, but I feel like when we started, we were both kind of like more heavily in the gamist side. Is that true to you? Do you think that's true?
I think so. Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. And I think we've probably shifted. So, it's we've been doing the episode for 6.5 years, something like that. We're doing the show for 6.5 years, but we've also been LARPing for an additional 6.5 years, right? That is a long time. That's a lot. I mean, for me, that is a lot of events, right? That's, depending on the year or whatever, if that was, somebody said to me that was 80 or 90 events, it wouldn't completely shock me. So that is a lot of experience, and that's a lot of time to, to reevaluate what I like. And yeah, I think probably over time, I'm like, I don't want to think about all of these numbers anymore, or really what's happened to me is I'm getting closer and closer, better and better at distilling what it is that I'm actually care about, and having less and less patience for stuff that I don't care about. And so, I've developed this, this mentality of rules aren't valuable for the sake of rules. Rules have to accomplish a purpose. And then I go, well, what is the purpose? And then I go, okay, what is the least impactful way to do this thing, right? What is the easiest way, the most efficient way to accomplish whatever this purpose is? And so that's how my thinking goes now when it comes to rules. And that kind of inevitably leads you to start trimming rules things out of your life a little bit. And I think that just you're reducing your gamist elements to a certain extent.
I think myself, I started out, I was very gamist when I was running LARP Ohio. Obviously, I had a penchant for foam fighting was a big deal for a while, and I still think it's important. But I think if I were to pick like my top three in that list, I think actually narrativist is probably highest for me now, and then both gamist and simulation, immersion or whatever, are both kind of equally well below narrative.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do whatever you want. That's right. I mean, you can live your own truth. I don't care.
I mean, I guess for me, it's a lot of been, so I'm all about I'm a huge fan of the story, and I'm a huge fan of an immersive experience. I don't know. I think I'm kind of with you. I do like rules for the ability to help define the physics of the world, I guess. And I'm still American enough to, in my LARPing to enjoy this sort of third party validation of them. Like, no, this is legit because the rules have kind of spelled out that it's legit. But I'm also fascinated, for example, and I've told the story before about how sometimes the rules can really create an interestingly narrative, visceral experience where the climax of Magical 2, throughout there was this moment. So in Accelerant, you have various delivery methods, by my, using packet, using a weapon, by my voice, by my gesture, by your name, right? And so it might be like, by your name, Bill Tobin, agony by fire. So I just say that, and then Bill.
It's weird because that's not my character's name. Seconds, right? But there is another person with that character. It's bizarre.
Oh, well, that's a little awkward. But so, imagine doing that for, 17 years. And then we walked into the final battle against, the Blood Queen, who had been, for Magical 1, lurking in the background as the evil force in the universe. And then in Magical 2, we finally are like, oh, wow, we're actually going to go up against her? Like, that's ridiculous. And it had been over a decade and a half in the making. And she starts with saying, in this world, agony, something like by something, whatever. Right? And we had been so conditioned to that rule set and how the rule set communicated the world to us that she said that, and it was deeply impactful what that did to us, because it was like, yeah, she just hurt the planet and we felt it. Like, it was really so there are these elements that they can feed back and forth in interesting ways, and I almost feel like that moment is like scratching the surface of a whole new, I shouldn't say new because I'm sure somebody's doing it, but like new to me, sort of gay-miss narrative is discipline.
So we got a question. Shaughnessy McDaniel, one of our patrons.
Yes.
Thank you. So question, maybe you want to take this one first, but what's one role-play interaction that you've had that you regret, and what would you have done differently?
So there's one that's been haunting me for a few years now. And in the grand scheme of LARP, maybe it's not the biggest deal in the world, but and it's one of those, the player involved, she's a pretty self-actualized, confident human being, so I don't even know how much she gave a damn, but I was like, wow, did I screw that up? So this was Mirror Mirror, and it was actually interacting with Dave Inkpen's PC and his wife Zephyr's PC, right? So it's my NPC, and I'm playing this weird fighting Fae champion-ish weird dude. Like, it was a whole complicated, convoluted thing, but from the PC perspective, I was this loud, boisterous Fae creature that liked to fight and liked to duel. And then there was a thing where we had written into this history that every year I needed to duel the lord of a particular place as part of sort of maintaining the peace. And Dave was the guy who was the lord of that place. To summarize the summary of the summary. And I went out and I was presenting that, and Dave wasn't necessarily playing a big duelist fighty guy, but Zephyr, who was playing, is sort of playing, their characters clearly, I'm trying to remember, they were on the same team. I think she was either actually in service to him, or just like good friends in game. But she said to me, well, I serve my lord, can I champion him in his stead? And I was all up in my head about how I was like, no, I have to fight the Lord, and that's how this works. And I said no. And I said no, and like 1.3 seconds too late, I realized, so I'm like, I said no, and then it kind of ended shortly thereafter. I start to walk away, and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? What the hell? She's playing a fighty character. He's playing a lord. This is like a perfect, cool, like, yeah, you have your champion fight for you kind of moment. She clearly wants to fight me. What the hell is wrong with me? Why wouldn't I just do that? And it was just the dumbest, least player fun instinct. And I have been literally kicking myself about that it's been a number of years since, I think it was, how many years has it been since Mirror Mirror ended now? Like 4 years or something ridiculous? I don't know, 2. Like, it's been a number of years, and that was towards the end. So I've been kicking myself about this for years now, because it's driving me crazy. And I, to this day, feel bad, and I was never able to go back and kind of like reconstitute and be like, no, as it turns, like, I think I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. I may have gone out and said, next time we'll do this, and then the game ended, or I was planning to and never got to go and tell her that. I just felt like such a douche. So that one, That was just bad. So I regret. I'll regret that one forever. Dave is probably listening to this either live or eventually, and so if you could just like apologize to Zephyr for me, because I still
I don't have a particular one moment that I regret, but I kind of like general regret about the way that I chose to play one of my characters. Like my first character that I played. Oh yeah.
Oh, I've got a bunch of those, so I'm coming up.
So like my first character that I played, I got kind of I was trying to feel around what my place was, and I eventually became like an undead hunter and like a member of Order, which whatever. I mean, a lot of people do that, so it's not that special. I don't want to say that people's ideas don't make them special, but there's a lot of people like that around. But in the area that we played, there was a lot of people who kind of were very gray, I would say, like kind of like sat the fence and would let people get away with anything. And so there were a lot of people who had like, bad characters, and this was in Nero, so like casting necromancy and things like that. And like, I kind of built my character as like a counter to the idea where people are like, well, it's cool if you cast necromancy, just don't do it in town or whatever. Which is fine.
Right.
But I found out that like a lot of people, like after the fact, I found out that people like wouldn't go on mods if I was there because they didn't want to like get in trouble, which, to me, I made an active point where a lot of people would be like, so-and-so is a necromancer. And I'd be like, I do not have proof, so I cannot act on it. Like I didn't specifically want to mess up anyone's game.
Right.
But like, I guess because I had like a reputation for being so extreme in regards to that, like it shied people away from attending a lot of mods. And this goes back to, what was the one where we talked about Aardvark, where like we didn't really have a code word, so nobody could like say like, hey man, I really want to go on this mod.
Oh, right.
I just don't have, I realized that our characters wouldn't normally get along.
Banana.
Like
yep.
I guess Aardvark is the safe word or something like that.
Yep. I think Aardvark was our like, this is too intense. I'm trying to. It's been a while. Bananas.
So like I kind of wish that I had been that I didn't give off those vibes, because I made it a point internally to be like, I'm not gonna like bust anybody unless like I literally see them cast necromancy. My best friend could say that guy cast necromancy like 2 seconds ago, and I wouldn't trust him. But like I think it actually did keep people from going on mods, and I felt bad about that.
That's fair. What's interesting about that story is that so when I went to so my very long time Nero PC had a kind of moral shift, and he went from sort of gray to white, I guess, right? Like he became sort of very much the white knight, a little bit of a speck, and he still has a pass and all that, but he became a much better person. And so there was a shift where he suddenly was like not necro safe, for the term. He no longer suffered from necrolepsy and all that. And two things. One, I think, which is the funny part to me, is that in game I would like very loudly wander around proclaiming how I was no longer necro safe, and just awkwardly insert into random conversations that yes, if somebody cast necromancy around me, I'd have to turn them in, just so that everybody knew, right? Like it would just somebody be like, "Hey man, how's it going? How'd that adventure go yesterday?" Be like, "It went fine, and luckily nobody cast necromancy, so I didn't have to turn them in like I would have to now." Right? Like, so I had to condition all my friends to, because I didn't want them to like assume that I was and cast a bunch of necromancy around me and be like, "Oh god damn it," right? But the flip side is that in game I actually, a fair amount, I lost a chunk of friends, and then so what I find interesting is that people were self-excluding them, I can't even say the word. They were keeping themselves from going on mods with you, and in my version, people wouldn't bring me on things. So, which I think, like, they were like, so it's kind of an interesting difference there where, like, the different person got left out. But it's the same basic scenario of the lone, non-necro safe person. But speaking of necrolepsy, what cracks me up is that my wife Allison, who used to play Nero, has the only actual legitimate case of necrolepsy I have ever seen in my entire life.
Now, we should get some reference point to this for people who don't play Nero. So necromancy is like healers can cast either like healing magic or necromancy, and it's pretty much interchangeable. And in 99% of locations, necromancy is legal. Like you do.
Right, and it's like a death sentence, and it's considered this fundamental corruption of the world. So necrolepsy is essentially not noticing when people cast necromancy around you. Hey, did that guy cast anything? I didn't see it. I was distracted. I fell asleep. Whatever. Necrolepsy. And necrolepsy is BS, right? Like it's not a real thing, except for Allison. It cracks me up because somebody will used to cast necromancy near her PC occasionally, like accidentally or whatever, and they'd be like, dude, this happened. I remember this one particular encounter it happened, and they were panicking. Because everything about Allison is that she's pretty much universally loved. So this was not one of those like I'm gonna roll her moments. It was, oh no, I'm about to get executed moments when she tells on me or something. And so somebody is on a module, they cast some necromancy, and then they're like, it was the heat of the moment. They come to me like, I cast some necromancy near Allison's character, and her actual character name. And oh my God, I'm so screwed. What's going to happen? Is she safe, or what's going to happen? And I looked at him and I said, she didn't notice. And he goes, it was right next to her ear. Like I was yelling it in her ear and throwing over her shoulder. How could she? And I looked at, and I know Allison really well. And I looked at her and I looked at him and I saw what was going on. I'm like, don't worry. She didn't notice. And he's like, there's no chance. I'm like, she legitimately has the only real case of necrolepsy. And he was like, that's not. And then he looked at her and he looked at like because she was still fighting or whatever. And he's like, wow, yeah, she's totally didn't. Okay. All right. And that happened more than once. So, so character regrets, like character creation regrets and things like that. I have apologized both to, and I feel like I've probably mentioned it on the show before. I've apologized to the Endgame and Oralis staffs for this because I went and played those games, and those were moments where I was like experimenting with evil or neutral or not normal or something weird LARP characters. And I really didn't create characters that gave those worlds a fair shake. And then I didn't have a great time on at least one of them. I stopped playing for financial reasons. And the other one I didn't have a great time. But really, the one I didn't have a great time, I was unreasonable in my feedback to them. And that's Oralis. And I didn't give Oralis a fair shake. Of course, I didn't have a good time. I didn't write a character to their world. I wrote a weird-ass character that didn't really interact. And they had to bear the unfair brunt of that. So, and that was like playing a pure evil sociopathic crazy guy possessed by the spirit of a murdering monster. Like it was a whole weird thing. And then in Endgame, I'm playing a gangbanger from Detroit. That's post-apocalyptic kind of Earth with magic and zombies and stuff. And so there was a group of us that were a street gang from Detroit, and that was actually fun. But again, I didn't give the world itself or the plot. We were really wrapped up in being our team and doing stuff like that, but I did not give the actual story and plot lines of the game what was due. And by the time I realized that and was like, oh man, I really gotta fix this, I ran into a period of my life where I just couldn't afford to play that many LARPs, and I had to let it go. But I always felt really bad. Because again, both these games did everything to accommodate and be nice and kind of, help us into the thing. And I just did not give them the proper invested shake that they were due. So that one still bothers me.
All right. So, we have a question here that's, you're one of the things that we were going to talk about, which is least favorite episode. That's whatever. Let's not talk about least favorite episode. If you could do over one episode that we did, a topic that we did, and that you feel like your opinions or your methods associated with it would change, or if you think that its relevance would be appropriate. If you could do any one episode over again, which one would you do?
Ooh. Let's see. Any one. Let me take a look. I'm kind of scrolling. I read a list over here of I pointed and realized my pointing hand was outside of the frame.
Oh my God. That's what
Looking
makes
at those, look at our list. You know, what are what's a good? That's a tough one, right? What would I do?
I dropped that one on you, so let me give you my answer first, so that you have some time to think about it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So we talk about different like styles of LARP that are big or are not big in America, and we did a podcast about. Well, I guess we've kind of done like a couple of them about microtransactions and monetizing LARP. And I know that like as soon as you bring up those terms, people get like, you're a supervillain at that point in time. I do think that there is an opportunity for that, because the truth of the matter is most LARPs do not last because it's too much effort for too little payback. There's a lot of LARPs that go positive, but not a lot of LARPs go positive and are able to like pay their people. And I think, particularly even in this day and age, because I think we did the microtransaction thing like 2-3 years ago, and it's become a lot bigger. I think it's hard to find a video game now that doesn't have an option for like cosmetic monetization. And like I feel like there's definitely room for something like that in a LARP, and using that to either reduce the fee for attendance, reduce the cost of getting like a kit together. Because in reality, the most expensive part of a LARP is not, well, at least here in Ohio, is not the attendance to the LARP. But it's the cost of driving to the camp, the cost of getting all of your gear, the cost of food, both to the event and like while you're at the event, and then like the cost of gas. Those things, they stack up way more against the cost of the event. Because down here, you're hard pressed to find an event that costs more than $70 for a weekend, which is, as I've mentioned before, is completely insane. Completely insane. And
I'm so jealous.
Maybe it's because camps are cheaper down here, and I mean the LARPs definitely break even. But I mean the amount of work that actually goes into presenting these LARPs, like breaking even, is not enough, and it just chews people up. And I mentioned in the last episode that I finished my last event as plot. I'm stepping back for a while. I'm burnt out on it, and it's hard for me to get the mind space to really throw myself into something that's not like my creation. I'm part of a plot team, but like the rules of the world and the overall story of the world is somebody else's story, and it's not necessarily something that I want. I have visions of things that I want to do, but I don't necessarily have the stamina to fight for the things that I want that other people might not want out of it. So
right.
I think microtransactions, implementing a good microtransaction system, because the truth of the matter is charging, somebody dropping an extra $25-$30 at a LARP against the actual cost of the LARP is not a huge deal. I mean, we talk about a lot of people who, they're concerned and they can barely afford LARPs, and as long as you have a solution for them, it doesn't need to necessarily, and you don't want buy and build. You don't want to do what Nero did. That got a little out of hand. Are they still selling build?
Yeah, I think they upped the price at some point.
I remember recently you get a lifetime membership. So anybody who used to play Nero and doesn't anymore, you get a lifetime membership for $250, I think, and it came with 90 build for your character, which to me is insane. If you're not familiar with the game, if you've been playing Nero for a while, let's say you're level 20, because as you level up, you get build slower. 90 build is basically the equivalent of attending like 150 events, which is bananas that you're selling that for $250. And I've heard stories of people with like, when I played, like the high level mod was anybody who was above like 25th level. And now like, if you're 25th level, you're in the newbie mods.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to argue that it has a leveling problem. I just don't know how much build buying has impacted it. Right. Like I've never bought build and I'm pretty high level. Right. So is build buying the issue, or is it just the fact that you have a 29 year game without, any kind of reset, right? And with very few rules about XP gain for most
I mean,
of its existence.
I mean, there's obviously some fringe cases, and I don't know what the effect they have on it. Like, you could attend pretty much every Nero event that's ever happened, probably concurrently. Like, even if there was like 5 different weekends on the same weekend, and you somehow attended all of them, I do not think that you could have the amount of build that some of the people who have bought build have. Now, granted, that's like literally 1 or 2 people.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't know how much it actually has affected anything. So there's a guy I know who's probably like 250th level. And he clearly bought a humongous amount of that build. So he dropped some serious money. Do I think he should have? I mean, I don't know how much superfluous cash he has lying around, but probably could do something else with it. But he's also a pretty laid back dude who kind of hangs around and chills out and kind of vaguely helps if something's going on, but it doesn't really, if like that guy buying build has caused exactly.
And I believe that, and there's definitely people for that.
And
now,
the
other thing I will say about buying build is like, if you think that didn't happen before, you're crazy.
Right.
I remember hearing stories about Nero Kalamazoo or Nero Keizu, who was a chapter and then got their license pulled. Probably, I mean, they ran all right games. I never went to one, but I've heard that they were all right because they're in our area. But they probably got it pulled for legitimate reasons. I mean, we were dealing with people. There were people that had at the time that we were running it, probably like, I would say actually probably like 2008, 2009. There were people with like 760 build who we knew did not travel.
Okay, wow.
And we're pretty sure that they dropped maybe a couple grand on that character, and so. I guess making it like above board is better than having this stuff happen in shadows, right? I don't
know. Yeah, there's a what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so there used to be stories. So particularly the farther back you go in Nero's history, when it comes to buying build or magic items or whatever, you sort of there's the kind of a more and more corruption, right? Because I mean, well, listen, when it was 1 chapter, you just like they did whatever, and then it was 4 chapters, they all kind of just did whatever, right? And you didn't start having any kind of rules or more than lip service to those rules until pretty far down the road. And there are stories of not only buying build or getting build for whatever, but I mean, there used to be tons of like, go sleep with the head of plot and you'll get magic items and cool plot, right? Or go do this favor for that, like there's a lot of that kind of stuff that was around. By the way, I ran Nero for about 9 years. Not once did anybody solicit me for anything. I feel like not once. It's not that I'm willing, that I'm corrupt and would say yes, but it's nice to be solicited. I'm just saying, like, not once. Nobody was like, hey Mickey, how about we how about, I'll slide a crisp Benjamin under the door for you, and maybe my character gets this cool transform. Not a single bribe attempt. Nobody tried to pay me in sexual favors.
Hey, I mean, if you believe the response to 9th edition rules, I mean, you were literally in charge of all the changes, and you only made changes for your character. So what made people think that you wouldn't take bribes?
That's true. I know. Like, come on, guys. Like, what's... I got all the shit for being corrupt, but I never got any of the good part. Like, it's just not fair. So I like Shaughnessy's, by the way, great chat. He's like, you could just telling us in the chat we could just redo an episode. He's like, yeah, you're probably right. So I think the one that I might think about redoing. Okay, let me start again. If I had the necessary time to prep it, which I don't know that I do, revisiting the marketing one would probably be a good idea, kind of taking a lot of our evolved understanding and experience.
Yeah.
So taking that marketing episode, getting Dan back in here, getting, but now we've got, the Fifth Gate Kickstarter, understanding. We've got some other LARPs that have kicked. We've got Dystopia Rising out there. We've got these other marketing ideas that we could then incorporate into. But it would just take a fair amount of research and organization. And if there's one thing that Larpcast is not known for, it's research and organization. And then the other episode, I guess I would do again. It's actually, this is like a backhanded. It's not even backhanded. This is a forehanded compliment to us. I just we've said before, 99.9% of Larpcast content is us taking the first episode and talking about some other minor part of it. And I almost kind of wish that we could just take a whole, like, do another episode and just be like, by the way, guys, we're just going to talk about trust again. But really, it's just, if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to our very first episode, go listen to that, because that's.
I was about to say, you know, I wouldn't change anything that we've done for you know, the world. I felt like our message was very clear in that. Although on the other hand, I haven't listened to it in a while, and I bet our first podcast is probably some sort of audio nightmare to submit yourself to. So maybe that would be a good idea to do that one again.
Just for audio reasons. Yeah, you know, a mere 6.5 years later, I finally have this new equipment, right? Like, so that might just be worth. I mean, hell, you know, we could do a word for word remake. It would just be sound better. You know, the hard part is, I'll be honest. So the hard part is about answering a question like that for me, is that's not how my memory works. So I'm a caricature of an absent-minded genius archetype, right? So I have a ridiculous memory for like some series for certain things, and then I have a hilarious inability to remember other obvious things for people. So when you ask me that question and I look at the list of episodes, my mind does not recall to me, like, how did that episode go? It might recall some bits, and if I looked at the show notes, but that would just take forever while we're on air, then I might remember more. But I have a real hard time remembering. So I've had conversations with people about episodes occasionally, and they said, dude, when you said blah in X episode, you know, like, that was really cool. And I'm like, wow, thank you so much. Can you remind me what I was talking about at the time? Like it feels really bad because, you know, clearly it meant something to this person who's giving me what is literally the ultimate compliment that you can give to somebody who's performing, you know, doing any form of art or performance or broadcast. But my brain doesn't store the information in quite the same way as other people sometimes. So without a little bit more to go on, I don't have the recall that really our listeners do. So it's hard for me to answer that question. But I'm just I'm able to sort of puzzle out that we could probably revisit marketing, because in 6.5 years, I know we've learned more things about it, and it's so critical for the success. Marketing is a much more important and influential piece of business than sometimes people give it credit for. And, you know, advertising is a subset of it, governs our world in a lot of ways. So I know we've learned stuff, and thus redoing that episode, I could like puzzle out. We could probably provide a lot of value that way, but I don't have a really super clear memory of it.
Honestly, if you think back 6 years ago, you were still a lawyer. I was still an application engineer. So now marketing is like legitimately like a non-trivial part of both of our jobs. So. That's
true. Yeah, I have my own practice, right? So marketing is like, you know, a huge percentage of my time.
Falls under marketing, so there's that. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we got a question in the chat from Bill Bixby. Do you guys think that buying build is bad for any LARP? Pros and cons. My answer is inherently no. I think buying build is fine, but a lot of it has to do with what that build gives you in the LARP. So in general, anything that you can do to allow players to donate money to the LARP to help improve the experience and help support the people who are making it, I think is valuable. And giving people, you know, something for their donation is very important. The problem is kind of the way that Nero handles build and also the unlimited spending of it. Because if somebody were an unsavory person and wanted to spend, you know, $2,000 buying build or whatever, and they could use that to give people a bad time at your LARP, and in which case it's not appropriate, because you don't want any kind of like build selling that's going to take away fun from other players. But I think in a lot of LARPs, there's a lot of benefits that you can give people that doesn't directly remove fun from other players, and I think that you could probably implement a microtransaction scheme that does that, so that people do feel more powerful internally. but it doesn't really affect other people's game things. The problem is whenever you have a game that allows any kind of PvP, that becomes hard to gauge. And in particular, build buying actually is like more valuable the higher level that you get, because the cost per point of build in Nero is the amount of effort it takes to get one build when you're low level is very low. You can get like 7 build from attending your first event or something like that, whereas it might take you 7 events at very high level to get 1 build or something like that. That seems like that's an exaggeration on the high end, right. But it gets you might get 1 build an event, and so in that case it makes more sense to buy build.
Right. I have to say that I think that the answer is actually even more complicated. But it starts from the same place. I don't think that there's inherently anything wrong with it. So Nero is a special case, right? So if the question is about there's sort of a all LARPs version of this question, and then there's a Nero version of this question. And the Nero version of it is has a lot of nuance to it, but definitely one of the factors in Nero that doesn't necessarily exist in a lot of, like, most accelerant LARPs I play have a very flat acquisition structure. You go to an event, you get a build, you get a character point. Fill out a PAL, you get a half a character point. Pre-reg, you get a half, or whatever it is, right? They have some version of that where even if you already have 150 character points, you get 1 every event, right? So it's just like that. Nero has as Bill sort of described, has a more complicated version of that, where getting character points or build points gets harder the longer you go. And so buying a build has a little bit of, has some different factors to it. But the things that I look at, or that come to mind when I start trying to figure out, like, is this okay or not, is this. If you can acquire build through donation, then there is no reason that you should not be able to do so through money, right? If a prop donation, if giving the chapter packets can get you some version of this, then I don't see any reason why money shouldn't do the same. Some people have time and some people have money. I don't have time. I actually don't have skill either, right? As said earlier in the episode, I can't make anything out of anything. So if the only way that that a LARP has to allow for sort of advancement outside of events is the donation of a finished product, I'm actually screwed. I can't, right? Not in any useful way. And I know there's a bunch of people listening that are like, well, you're just not, if you just put your time and effort into it, yeah, sure, I guess, if I spent enough time. But time is also valuable. They say time and money. Time is money. Well, yeah, time is money. Money is time. So I think that there's no moral difference. If I have money to give and somebody else has time to give, why don't you let the person who would donate time and I'll donate money, and you're good to go. Like, there is a weird judgment that you see about people donating money instead of donating finished products, right? Well, how about I just donate the money to the chapter and they'll go hire somebody to do the thing or buy it, right? What's the difference? There are people out there who will make packets for money. So if a chapter's like, we want 500 packets, okay. So if I go to that person and I buy 500 packets from them and I hand those 500 to the chapter, is that a problem? Is it that you specifically need me to suffer X amount of hours before you're willing to give me build or XP or whatever? So that's my first thing. Like, a donation is a donation of time or of money, as long as there's a whole thing we could talk about in terms of, you need to make sure, chapters need to make sure they're asking for what they want and getting what they need, not just like random crap. But, if my money will help the chapter, it is as valuable and as valid and as moral as my packets or masks or weapons or banners or whatever. Let me. So that's my first thing.
You might have more there, but I do have something that I want to chime in here.
Yeah.
And it's a hot take, and maybe I'll dive back into it after you finish what you're saying. I'll let you finish. Okay.
I think it's all these LARPs that are asking for donations, just donate cash. That's what they need. They'll buy the things that they need. Just donate cash. If they need something specific, they will contract it out to someone. But if you want to help a chapter, donate cash.
Yeah, well, or like Fifth Gate has they have one of their page on their website. There's a page in there that's they're sort of this is what the stuff we need donated or whatever, and it's like a Amazon, it's like an embedded Amazon thing where you can click on them, and then it'll create a shopping cart, and then you buy it, right? So yeah, they don't get the cash, but what did I do? I didn't make the Xylem sticks. I didn't make the paper or the supplies or whatever. I just ordered them from Amazon and sent them there. So they made it really easy to do that, and they get the objects they need. But again, if they hadn't bothered to put that page up and they just said like, "Hey guys, we have $150 worth of stuff we need to buy from Amazon. Everybody who gives us $20 gets a CP or whatever." Okay, what's the moral difference between them doing that and me doing it? Like, okay, who cares? So that's. I have this whole thing that drives me crazy whenever this conversation comes up, because there's always somebody in the crowd who finds it immoral to donate.
If you are running a LARP and you do have a donation system, get an Amazon wish list. War does that, and it is basically everything that my wife puts on the wish list gets bought every event. So do it. It's free props.
So right. So that's my first kind of thing, right? Like, is donation? Will you give XP for donations? If yes, then money is fine. And then from there, other things that I might look at. So, is other factors are what's the culture of the game? Is it a hyper competitive PvP? Everybody's kind of an asshole and a bully to each other kind of game. Then then I'm going to be less in favor of it, right? If it's a cooperative game, if it's a little bit more PvE, if it's or if it's just out of game, regardless of what in game it's like. If out of game everybody is much less dickish to each other, then I'm a little bit more inclined to allow it. Nero again is a special weird creature. So also things like a lot of the games that I play have have caps on how much you can gain in any given year, regardless of the method or the source, right? So it's like, okay, we only allow you to get 20 CP per year. Now you can do that through attendance, you can do that through donations, you can do that through painting the owner's house, whatever, but you can only get 20 CP per year. So if somebody's like, okay, I'll drop 10 grand and get my 20 CP or whatever, talk about an exchange rate, great. But that's all, And by the way, every now and then, especially in the Nero context, people say, yeah, but then somebody will just spend a bunch of money and never, and get all this build, and just not even go to an event. I'm like, well, if they're never at an event, then they could have 10 million build.
They get no value out of the money that they spend, and yet you could conceivably get value out of it if they say use that money to buy a golf cart and run more mods for you.
Right. Exactly. And on, right? Yeah. But I think I've gone far enough down that hole.
So in reality, I guess the sum of it is we are both for it. We're not sure that necessarily the way that Nero has done it is the best, although Mickey seems to think that it's not as bad. The problem, of course, the major problem with build buying Nero is nobody knows where the money's going, and nobody really wants to fund where that money is supposedly going or what they believe that money is going. That's the real... Right. That's the real
problem. Well, so... I rate that as the second worst problem in Nero's build buying. The worst problem in Nero's build buying is the pages of arguments about it. That's actually I think the worst. That's the worst consequence I've seen, is 1,200 hours of people doing angry Facebook posts calling each other names. In actual game play, because I've been playing steadily. I've been playing a lot, particularly this year. Somebody having bought build has yet to affect an event that I've seen.
What's the big deal? What's the big deal about using birdseed packets? Another question from Bill Bixby. The big deal about it is that people are stuck in old tech. I think the new tech.
The
truth of the matter is that biodegradable airsoft pellets are probably just as good, if not better. People complain that they're too hard, but they're definitely not as hard as the way that some people pack birdseed. I think it's just that people are sticking to their guns on what they've used to do. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of places have banned birdseed, a lot of the parks around this area, because what happens is people would make bad birdseed and the squirrels would eat it and get sick, and because they're idiots, I guess, and they eat too many seeds. I don't know the details. It was originally done because the birds would eat them, and if they got left behind, it wasn't a big deal, and also it's inexpensive to make.
Right. I was gonna say there is a certain element of packets where, you know, a LARP as they are done now, LARPs need a lot of packets. I think we have an episode about getting rid of packets, right? But LARPs as they are done now, um, they need a lot of packets. Well, birdseed cloth and rubber bands is pretty cheap way, and it's something you can just. I will tell you, I can make a packet. Now it's not going to be the best packet you've ever seen, but even I can make a packet, and that says something about how easy it is. And so I think that there's so having them is probably just, keeping that availability out there, because if you just have everybody make their own while watching TV or whatever, it's just easy to do. I don't know how to buy the airsoft pellets. I don't know how easy they are. So it's just one of those things. And then we've got a bunch of comments about people are really diving into the packet thing, but it's like Kevin and Larry, hey guys. So I'm not sure if they're trolling.
I mean, Kevin actually said, I actually get why, but I missed the good old days. So,
so
what shape packets do you think work the best? I would. That's a two-part. You have to decide what the definition of the best is. If you're asking the ability to throw them accurately, the answer is you pack them as tight as you possibly can. Just you do the film can technique, and you get it as tight as you can, and then you find some way to like wrap the rubber band a few more times and roll it down so that it's like dangerously tight. And actually, so like that throws the best. Don't do that though. Actually, one thing that we didn't know before we went to Accelerate, because that's literally how everybody packed their packets. People still pack their packets that way. And donate them, and we're like, we can't take these because they're not legal, because Accelerant says you can't do that because you're going to take somebody's eye out. And it's miraculous. When we used to run under Nero, we would get maybe 3 to 4 eye shots an event that would literally stop combat. We'd have a hold. We have to pull somebody from combat. We have to have a medic look at their eye and make sure that they're not going to go blind or anything like that. And they never did. But like, people got pulled out of combat. People got black eyes. As soon as we stopped like packing them as tight as possible, all of a sudden, like, we never had any eye shots ever. I mean, and that's not that nobody got hit in the eye. It's that they got hit in the eye and they're like, oh, I got hit in the eye. Let's keep fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin's talking about some of the crazy stuff he's found in packets, ball bearings, sand. Yep, I remember I got hit in the chest once with and it was like I was wearing some sort of V-neck thing, so it was literally like my skin, and it was like a pre-cooked macaroni packet, right? So that one hurt. I have seen, there's been ball bearing packets, sand, macaroni, rocks. No, I literally just like gravel in a packet. Let's see, the sesame seed packets, so you're supposed to use like this parakeet bird feed stuff that doesn't have any of the sesame seeds. There's been a packet that was just sesame seeds. It was like if I'm going to make 19 normal packets, I have to put the sesame seeds.
When you say square packets, Lawrence, are you talking about like the ones that are like they literally are the shape of a film, like a film canister? That's not even a thing that people use anymore. That used to be the way that people made packets. Are you talking about the one that like literally is like kind of cylindrical in shape? That's all I can think of for this square pack. Okay, yeah. No, I hate those things. I think they're a nightmare. I think they're a travesty. I don't think that they should exist.
What are you talking? Are you talking about the ones that are like sewn?
No, they're like weird cylindrical nightmare packets. Like, I don't trust them at all. They're literally the shape of a film canister. They're not round. Yeah, they're like an old school beanbag. It's like if I were to throw my cornhole bags at you for spellcasting, which probably would do less damage than like the highly packed packets that we used to use.
So my friend Alan is he has this thing. So Alan's a pretty tall guy, and I'm not that tall. I mean, I'm not like Bill Tobin short, but I'm not that tall. And but Alan has this thing where his eyes have a gravitational attraction to packets. Like, it just doesn't matter. So there was definitely a period of time where it was like, oh, hey, look, Alan got smashed in the eye again. Well, smashed in the eye, every event, like kind of like clockwork. And so I think actually, moving to Accelerant probably helped a little bit, at least cut down the damage. Because, the other thing is he would often play like boss monsters behind the line of his minion fighters, right? And so the only thing that you could aim at is his face. Like you're aiming for his chest because you can kind of get that, but then you're instinctually aim a little higher and right in the eye every time.
We used to call that around our chapter getting Dan Canton, who was a caster who was particularly proficient at throwing very fast and also hitting you in the face. All right, so do we really watch all the NPC costuming between events? I can say 99% of the time they watch all the costuming between events, and the 1% of the time that they don't, we do not use that costuming because it is gross.
Yeah, that is pretty gross. I mean, I don't know who they is in this question. Like, I mean, every game's different. I'm pretty sure, though, that if you didn't watch the costuming between events, it would be extremely noticeable extremely quickly. And the 14-year-old kid you've kidnapped to NPC for you will still wear it, but the, 32-year-old, mother of two is not going to.
All right, we got a couple questions. One of them is, of course, the classic.
I still think they're trolling us, to be clear. They do like to. I'm just saying, and I know you guys can hear me, but Kevin and Larry, you guys do like to troll people, particularly online. So, I'm just throwing that out there.
I understand that, but the truth of the matter is that one of those is considered a racist term and one is not. I didn't make the rules. If barbarian was considered a racist term, I'd choose that term too. In a second.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Nobody's paying me to use the word barbarian, so I don't mind. If I need to change it someday, then I'll change it. Incidentally, if anybody out there wants to pay me to use the word barbarian, I'm absolutely, negotiate that contract with you. But to date, it has not yet happened.
Have you seen the new trap boxes that are showing up on the scene? Nope. I mean, are you talking? I don't know what that is in reference to. I've seen a lot of the weird boxes that you could buy on Amazon. They're puzzle boxes, but I don't know if that's the same thing as trap boxes.
He might be talking about the ones Al Carmona had. Where I saw them at National, and I don't know anything about traps really, because again, disarming a trap is a lot like building something, but it's they are pretty cool. I did see a little bit of these boxes that had pre-drilled holes in them, or maybe he drilled them. I don't know how that works. And they had kind of a so all I could see as a person who didn't interact with them is that there was an actual mechanism and an actual way for a PC with tools to potentially figure out what was going on and actually disarm the box, which, despite the the words in the rulebook saying that you're supposed to have it be something that you could actually disarm, 99.9% of traps I've ever seen are completely undoable by an actual human being. So I think there was something about these boxes that made them both difficult but doable. And
maybe I'm not a human being, or maybe we just use a different type of traps. I think in Ohio, or maybe it's because we're Midwestern people and we understand frontiersmen living, and we can handle that sort of thing. I don't know what the deal is, but I've been on mods where but of course it's also ancient tech, so it's just all mouse traps. It's 50 mouse traps and just disarm them all. Whatever, that's no problem.
I did actually want to. There was a kind of an interesting thing. I wanted to go back. I think, where was it? Yeah, Kevin or Larry. One of them was talking about washing, cleaning a mask with a baby wipe before you put it on. So talk about bizarre, simple things that you can't believe nobody thought of until they thought of it. Was when I first NPC'd Madrigal years and years ago. It was the first time I ever saw a can of, I don't know what it was, Lysol, something. It was some spray-on disinfectant thing. And they just had it next to where the masks were. And, yeah, you went, used the mask, you came back, you sprayed it down, you left it to dry, and you wandered off about your life. Yeah. It was the dumbest, stupidest, easiest thing. And I had, at that point, been LARPing for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. 6 to 10 years. It's been a while. I don't remember these things. 6 to 10 years, and had never seen it. Not once, until Rob was like, hey, why don't we not spread as much infection and bacteria face to face as possible. It was a bizarre,
Is
stupid
the disarm
revelation.
trap actually a ploy to get people to buy build? Not good enough. I mean, I think actually it's a punishment for people not buying that skill. If they want to do it appropriately, what I would do is I would have a marshal, an out-of-game marshal there on the mod where there's lots of traps that show up, and the marshal's like, well, you can buy build for me, but it's at twice the price. You can get it right now. You could know how to disarm traps on this mod. Double price.
So, yeah. So Larry references, partial credit for puzzles and says he liked the idea. So thank you, Larry. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, puzzles, as I think I probably rambled. Fuck you.
You hate that cube. You hate that
fuck
plus
you, three-dimensional plus sign. Three-dimensional plus sign. Yeah, it's
all right.
So
my question, if anybody's wondering, 100th episode, my favorite rant ever. That was it. The plus sign puzzle was my favorite rant ever.
I can't. The thing has been haunting me, right? Like, if you're the horror movie the Mickey Golisovka horror movie is me like looking out my front door and just seeing.
I feel like even before we recorded that episode, while we were in like preparation for the episode, you ranted for 15 minutes about that puzzle box.
Oh yeah, I could do that forever. And then by the way, I did in fact run Jenga mods after that, and still do. There was actually kind of an interesting question. Do we think there should be a level cap at Nero? I want to talk about. I think talking about level caps. It's like some different LARPs work different ways. I can't talk suddenly. I don't want the question to just be about one LARP, right? Because people listen to this from a bunch of different ones, and so. My answer to that is, for Nero, should there be a level cap? I think the cat's kind of out of the bag on that one. I guess, yeah, you could, but you gotta have to pick, whoever the highest level person is and then put it above them, or you're gonna have endless. The problem is because of the way that Nero does buy build, right, and the culture of buying build in Nero versus the culture of buying XP in other games. If you put the level cap below where somebody already is, and if they bought their way to that, you're probably going to get some degree of a fight, if not a lawsuit, because they've really commodified it and been really, the culture is really like build equals money, as opposed to an enhancement to your experience. But the other thing is, Nero has a really interesting system. So what Nero needs is not so much a level cap. It needs maybe cap on how much damage you can repetitively swing, or a prof cap, or something that limits how much a fighter or a rogue can swing repetitively. Because that's the only place in Nero where where buying more of the same thing makes the thing more powerful. In any given fight, the difference between a 10 column and a 20 column is non-existent. It doesn't matter. Right, the spell
depends on
does
how
the
many
exact same
imprisons
amount
it takes
that
to
it
kill
does
that
all the
NPC.
Sure, but if it takes 15, then it's you're probably not doing it by yourself anyway. It's gonna be a pig pile of ridiculousness regardless. So, having a infinite, having a large number of times per day things, they're the same times per day thing. It's not great. I don't know that a level cap by itself can be instituted and affect a meaningful change, or be done in a way that doesn't cause, like the world's greatest headache. Now, doing some kind of reset, redesign, change, level cap there, sure. Level caps in other LARPs, I think, work pretty well. But you go into them knowing that they're a thing, so you have a level cap. A lot of games don't have levels, but like a CP cap, right? And you can have a CP cap, and it can be a yearly one, and it can be a total game one, And Madrigal 2, by the time it was done, the way it worked is you had 200, you could only gain, I'm trying to remember, 15 or 20 CP per year. You had a total game cap of 200 CP, which went up, and there was a couple of things that kind of broke that cap. So effectively, I think it ended up being about 210, something like that. And that was your normal CP. And then you could get more CP past that, but it could only be spent on manifests, which were like the magical version of transforms, if you know Nero. So there were these packages of special powers that only worked when plot told you that they worked, and otherwise they did nothing. And so you could have essentially CP spent on moments where a staff member might just give you boons anyway. So the cap worked fine, and you knew that it was there. Oralis, I think, has like soft caps and hard caps, and it's, you know, once you get to a certain amount of XP in a given year, then your rate of then each XP you spend, you know, gives you half as much as you normally would get for it. And then once you hit to a hard cap, I think it's like takes 10 XP to get 1 XP worth of skill, you know, and so they have their own kind of caps in there. And so I think caps are fine. Caps are a great way also to prevent you having to kill yourself in rules design by extrapolating your rules to, you know, sort of ridiculous degrees. You know, it's often said Nero was designed to, you know, for a 20th level system, right? And so that was where all the costs were kind of done out to. You know, and now we've got 250th level people, and so the system was never really designed for that. And if you don't have a level cap, you have to be like, okay, well, what happens at 50 CP, 100 CP, 200 CP, 300 CP, 1000 CP, right? I've talked about how in a limited run game, it's great because if I screw up a rule balance issue, well, you know, I can fix it, or I can be like, well, is it going to matter in 2.5 years? No, okay, I'm cool.
So the short answer, and actually I'm going to roll the next one because we also had the question of why does Nero shut down at midnight when I need marshals? It's like 4 a.m. and they're all asleep. So part of the reason is they're not paid to do that shit. That's pretty much it. Maybe the chapter owners are, but a lot of marshals, like, it's unpaid volunteer staff and they don't want to do it. If, say, you work for a Barnes & Nobles and you become a manager, a lot of times they'll have, like, national training, which they'll take you to for a weekend and you learn about books and shit. There's nothing like that for Nero, which is also why high-level build is a problem. It's also why marshals shut down, because there's no national system that says, like, hey, you're going to have to deal with people who have, like, 1,000 build. Here's how you deal with them. You know, we've been saying stuff about, like, how to handle that. Dan Comstock had a whole blog that was dedicated to how to handle that. And, like, the truth of the matter is nobody it's a management issue. If management wants, you know, makes it an issue for them to train people on how to handle these situations, they'll do that. But in Nero, they just don't do that.
Well, Nero has, I mean, I think we did an episode on institutional memory, right? And, like,
yeah,
Nero doesn't have any. Everybody's having to perpetually reinvent the wheel. And I'll tell you, a large part of that is because, you know, how many brilliant and creative human beings have left Nero on bad terms? So it doesn't have sort of, in short, some chapters, you know, there's obviously exceptions at every level and local chapters are better or worse. But as an organization, as a national organization, it doesn't have a culture that promotes, you know, mentoring and training and the passing along, the documentation of and passing along of knowledge. I mean, Nero doesn't know its own history and cosmology half the time. And then now we're getting into the esoteric stuff of, you know, how to run a field fight. And, you know, everybody's reinventing the wheel every 2.5 years.
We had a question about if you buy 150 levels of Craftsman, can you theoretically break the financial system of the chapter by checking in? I mean, it's a joke question, but also true. I will say, well, here's what I will say. From, you know, it looks like a joke to me, but I will say the number one biggest problem that thankfully War didn't have a problem when we were running, but a lot of the chapters around us couldn't afford the coin. Getting coin from National was kind of a nightmare when we worked there. There's a reason why. There are some weird coins with different designs on them that people are like, oh, that's from Stonegate, because those were the coins that we used, which had the same on one side but had a different icon on the other side, because we couldn't get Nero to get us the coin that we needed, so we got our own coin minted. And it's expensive as hell, and it sucks real bad when people, you know, just show up to take that coin and then leave. But
wait. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
That was you? Oh my God!
Do you want
do you want
some Stonegate coin?
Like, okay.
I'm sure it's not worth anything in your game.
Sorry, I've been like, who the hell is this? And they'd be like, that's Stonegate. I'm like,
Yeah,
where the hell is
if you ever
Stonegate?
need someone to check it and make sure that it's
Apparently
legit, I can do that for you.
Okay, good. Super useful. I will say nowadays, by the way, you couldn't, right? Actually, you could under two circumstances bankrupt like screw over the chapter. If one, the person who's doing the check-in is super pushover, or two, you're a huge bully. In those circumstances, yes, you could. Other than that, no, not really. Because one, they'll just be like, listen, let me put it this way. If I'm running logistics, I'm running check-in for a chapter, and you came in and you're like, I've got 12, you owe me 12 million gold. I'd be like, okay, well, I'll put it in your bank for you. Because Nero has a bank. And you're like, I don't want it in my bank. I'd be like, cool. And I'd pull out a tag and I'd write a chip for it and be like, here's your gold bar, because Nero does that now. Here's your evaluated item gold bar tag for that amount. And you're like, I want coin.
You guys have a national bank now?
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. It's built into the character database that you can have, your character can have money.
That was one of the big complaints that we had as well. So you guys didn't have a bank, and we had a bank.
Yeah.
It became weird.
Yep. Yeah. So now you can take your money after an event. You can take your money. You can turn it back into the chapter, get it on your character sheet, and move on with your life. So yeah, no, it's nowadays. Again, you're either a huge bully, the person's a huge pushover, or both. Then maybe you can cause some problems. But realistically and reasonably, it's, I want this. Well, I'm willing to do this for you. Well, I want this. Tough shit. Right. That's how that conversation goes. Probably a little bit more polite, because theoretically the person checking you in has some sense of customer service, which of course they don't, but hypothetically they should. Not that I have any customer service complaints.
Coin was a real problem, though. We had a great time. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the golden age of Nero in Ohio, I guess. There was something like 6 chapters in Ohio, and Joe just kept opening more chapters, despite the fact that Ward did have a exclusive agreement for Ohio. That's a total another story, though. Fun fact, I am not an owner. I have limited information that's associated with it, but people always ask us, why does Joe not go after us in the legal battles that he has? 2 reasons. One, we paid our agreements, like we paid royalties up until the day that we left, and also he breached our contract. So I'm pretty sure he breached his contract. From what I've heard, he's breached his contract. I have not seen it, but there was like 6 chapters in Ohio, and there were a lot of them that like either didn't have the money to buy gold for their game, or they didn't actually like have their own gold. So we had people who would come to our games because we had a bank at the time, which is one of the ways that we mitigated like the fact of that. And they'd come in the game and they try and like take as much gold out as they had from their thing, and then use it as NPC, like use it to bypass buying gold at their game, which was total shit.
Gotcha. Whereas now, I've been to a couple of events. The Dragon Isles did this, and I think Tyringel, and I thought it was really great. Which was we showed up and they said, okay, so everybody gets 50 gold in their bank, and that's a large portion of our treasure distribution for the weekend, like our gold distribution. So yeah, you'll still find more, but we've taken out 50 times however many people were there's worth of gold. And we're just adding it to.
Yeah, that's not even enough to max out for most people.
Yeah, so then go find the rest if you really want to. But I mean, I think I'm also, most places I play are auto max.
Yeah.
So
at the time, I was like,
really a big deal.
Auto max is a stupid rule when it first came out. But of course, we had a bank, so like I didn't realize the nightmare that people had. Where there's like, I went to a LARP event and they gave out 12 gold on the weekend because they didn't have any coin.
I always hated. There was this argument against Automax in Nero, and we should talk about some other non-Nero things for all of our non-Nero players. But real quick, Automax is this idea that you got half the XP for an event for showing up, and then you could get the other half if you turned in money for it, and that was sort of how you earned your XP. And that was an evolution from a previous system, which we don't need to go into 12 million things. But anyway, one of the arguments, so Automax was the idea that you just got all your XP for the weekend and you didn't have to pay money for it. And when that was introduced, and then for 10 years after, there was this argument about whether you should or shouldn't have it. And one of the arguments against it that always drove me crazy was, yeah, but then the guy who sits in who sits in their cabin all weekend gets the same XP as I do, and that's
who gives a shit,
and that's not cool. And I said, well, the guy who gives a shit, the guy who sits in his cabin all weekend, isn't doing anything. He can also buy 12 million build and still not do anything. So who cares? You know. So anyway.
I have not had a chance to play Dystopia
Let's
Rising.
see.
I was going to, and then never got a group together to do
Yeah,
it.
no, I never have. I want to check it out just to see how it runs versus kind of what the rule book looks like. You know, and I've heard some good and bad things about it. There's some things that I think they do structurally as a LARP that, based on what I've heard, I'm not a fan of. But it's one of those you kind of want to see it in action before you can really pass judgment. I will say that they have, if I recall correctly, they have a really long rule book that has elements in it that are sort of copied from, like, they have a page in there that's all about burrowing and flying and invisibility, and I just remember getting rid of those things when we were doing ninth, and you know, so to see the page of like all these concepts that used to drive me crazy, that's a little off-putting. On the other hand, I've heard that they have a really inclusive gaming culture and like a really good community vibe, and I think that kind of trumps most things about a LARP. So, you know, you could have the most mechanically perfect story, perfect special effects, perfect LARP, but if you're a pile of assholes being assholes to each other, I don't care, right? But if you get everything else wrong and you're kind of like a great group of people to spend time with, then you know you can forgive a lot. You know, so it's kind of so I want to check them out at some point in my non-existent copious free time.
When you say communications to me like walkie-talkies, Kevin, and you'll respond to this in like 30 seconds. Bill Bixie said, has anyone played at the pro site? Yeah, I've played at the pro, all the pro and all the Argo sites. Unless they got any new ones in the past like 5 years.
Yeah.
Raccoon State Park, I've been
Gotcha.
there. Had a pretty big deal event for me as a character. The Nobles were complete assholes, both in-game and out-of-game, because there was a bit of a feud between pro and war at the time. It was bad. But like the Nobles were like assholes, and I fucked up their plot. And I felt that that might go back to the original question that Chauncey had about the time that you felt bad. Like I fucked over their plot. They were trying to put this genie in a jar, and they were being assholes to me. So I told the genie, and the genie got away. And he gave me free casting of Arcane Armor 4.2. It's kind of a big deal back at the time. But apparently I messed up their plot line, which was when they shoved that genie in a bottle, like a bigger genie was going to come out. But like we thwarted it. I felt. Although I will say, fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, but fuck those guys. We were in high school and we had a cabin. Yeah. It was like 2 guys, 2 girls, and they raided our cabin and went through a bunch of people's out-of-game stuff trying to find this one item that we had. Like went through women's underwear, like totally inappropriate shit. And they were like, it wasn't under the bed. It was definitely under the bed. Those guys were assholes. But the funny thing about it is the item that they were looking for was literally on one of the characters. She had a bag full of throwing bananas, and the item was underneath that, and they never searched it.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, so Nero, for people who don't know, Nero has a rule that if your stuff's under the bed, it's out of game and can't, you can't search it and you shouldn't be putting stuff there or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm searching on top of your bed and I come to a pile of your underwear, I'm good. There's nothing that I need to find in game that makes me need to go through your underwear. Like, so yeah, if you ever want to hide something from me and you're gonna guarantee that I'm not gonna look through it, just put it in your underwear, I guess. Because what the hell I don't know what could possibly make somebody really be that invested in finding a slip of paper. So I want to see. I would like to talk a little bit. Like I said, I want to get a little bit away from the Nero focus stuff, and talk. Maybe talk about a few other things. Because this is not. We have some Nero guys who are in our chat, but we do try to hang out with everybody. So I'm curious, Bill. So I know you just changed. You had some change. What are you playing next year? I'm trying to remember.
Right now,
or if you're playing,
the plan is I'll probably continue to play at least a few events at war. I'm still a noble in one of the towns, which is ultimately NPCing. I'm trying to make sure that everybody has a good time and manage everything. but I'm probably going to reduce the amount that I actually play at other events. I may try and get to a Dystopia Rising game because that's going to be in the area. Also, kind of toying with the idea of possibly going to Drachenfest after the podcast that we had about that. So,
Oh yeah,
that's what I got lined up right
yeah.
now.
Gotcha. Yeah, so Drachenfest is something that would be fun to go to, but so I don't have vacation days, right? So I would have to have like a lot of really high-end clients in a row to build up enough, not only money to go, but also like to make up for the lost time. But maybe in a couple of years, I think that sounds like a lot of fun. What's weird, I realize, is that next year, for various reasons, I'm actually don't have Accelerant lined up. So I've started poking around a little bit, and I'm looking at there's this game called Lion Rampant, which undergoes sort of arc resets, and they're doing an arc reset. So next year is a new opportunity. Carrie Brooks, has been associated with them for a long time. I've known Carrie for a while, so he's been part of that community for a long time. And then there's kind of an interesting game coming up, and it's I've been a pretty strictly high fantasy genre guy most of the time. I did Endgame for a little bit, but again, didn't give it a fair shake. So Clockwork Skies is ending, and then in I think there's going to be a gap year, and then they're going to run a game called Clockwork Seas or something like that, which is like sort of nautical adventure, and I'll be interested to see how that works in a LARP site setting. Like, how are they going to do that? But it's run by a good crew, and I think that'll be kind of interesting. And I'm always interested at pushing the boundaries of LARP genres, so that's kind of exciting to me. Speaking of which, so this Starfinder came out recently, right? That's the
oh yeah
tabletop Pathfinder, right? It was this big deal. There's Pathfinder, another Starfinder. I'm really glad Starfinder came out because there's a solid, little tease, for people who looking at Invictus, is that the next Invictus has a large, most likely, I'm like, how do I say this the right way? Is a lot of interplanetary fantasy elements to it, I think is the best way to say it. So you'll have multiple worlds, and you'll have still a fantasy genre, but kind of
literal
fantasy
space
in
wars.
space. So literal space wars, right? Yeah. So we're gonna have that, and then which I think is gonna be great. So Starfinder, I think, might pave the way for the next couple of years. So by the time we run the LARP, the other downside is people are gonna be like, "Oh, you just ripped off Starfinder." I'll be like, no, but you know what? If that made you come to the event,
I'll drive to New England for Starfinder.
Nice. So I got a question here from Brad Gardner. How do we encourage players to turn in feedback and post event letters? Okay. You know what? This is maybe something, because we did an episode about this, that maybe I would go back
before you answer,
because
I know that your answer is going to be long. I can feel a rant coming on. So my opinion on this is, I would love to find a good way to do it. I can tell you what not to do, because I am not a big fan of the way that we do it currently in our game. We do anonymous surveys, and I think those are pretty much worthless, because when you make something an anonymous survey, it says, please bitch to me. All right, that's all I have to add. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that's true. And, it's like, yeah, so anonymity also removes all the context you need to properly evaluate what somebody is about to tell you. An anonymous person saying, I didn't have fun with, with the putting the ambulance together to kill Steve the Lich, doesn't actually tell you what you need to know versus, Bill didn't like this. I know Bill. Bill doesn't like X thing, and though he didn't give me all the information in his feedback that I would have wanted, I can put the pieces together and realize that Bill hates jewelry. So the fact that this was amulet based is probably what drove him nuts, right? Like, you have a certain context.
I do hate
which is obviously
jewelry.
A goofy example, so anonymity, anonymity goes back to that trust factor, right? And actually goes back to why, I think probably some of the number one things you can do to encourage Pels is how do you react to them, I think, is probably the biggest thing. And I'm going to talk about this, I think, in the reverse to say, here are the things that I have found that depress Pels, that keep Pels from being written. And I guess it's like, do the opposite of these things and hopefully you'll get more Pels. One of the biggest things I think that causes people to write fewer Pels, first of all, is actually that they kind of do disappear into a black hole. And very rarely do you get a response like, hey, thanks for the feedback, or got your thing, right? Some version of, we've read it. So when you send an email, you can do this read receipt thing, right? Which is usually really annoying for people, but you can do it. And you do that in the corporate world a lot. And what it does is it sends you a notification that so-and-so has read your email. When you send somebody a Facebook Messenger, like you use Facebook Messenger, you send them a message, there's a little thing that will actually pop up that there's a little icon thing that shifts that tells you that the person has actually seen it. At least that their computer has received it and they have some element has checked it. In a Pel, you email the Pel in and it goes to wherever it goes and probably a mailing list and maybe everybody has access to it, right? But that's the end of it. You don't ever really get a direct confirmation that anybody has read it or gives at all a shit about what you've written. And the only way you really find out that somebody has read your Pel is if at some point after that moment, somebody does something that you can deduce is in reaction to the Pel that you wrote, right? Like that's how you find out. I write a Pel that says, man, dear staff, I'm in this werewolf plot, but for these weird reasons, or these personal conflicts, could you please get me out of this werewolf plot? It's my ex-wife is also heavily involved in it, and I'd really like a way to bow out gracefully, but in-game I really don't have a good reason to do that. That doesn't make me look like a cowardly asshole. So if you guys could help me out, that'd be great. And if the next event, the avatar of your god shows up and says, Lothar, you are hereby commanded to abandon this quest and instead go seek out this sword. Okay, they clearly read your Pel. But unless that happens, that kind of black hole phenomenon, I think, probably makes it so that it's a little dispiriting. So that's one thing. Two is not actually following up at an event with Pels. Like, there was a game that I stopped Pelling because they had a sort of a survey form that you filled out with questions, which is a good idea, right? To get people to solicit the feedback that you want and get people's juices flowing on what they're writing back to. But one of the questions was, essentially, are you expecting follow-up on anything? And when the things I was expecting follow-up on that list was 4 or 5 years old, I was like, all right, what's great? What am I spending my time doing? Now, games will often give you some CP for filling out a Pel, so sure. And so I'll kind of fill out a Pel to get the CP. If I don't need CP in that particular game, though, I'm done. Why would I? So you've got to actually be responsive to them. And being responsive to those Pels means you have to create a logistical framework to do it. What is your process? Right? This is I have never gotten an actual answer. Maybe once. I shouldn't say never because my memory again doesn't work that way. So probably maybe once or twice have I ever gotten a satisfactory answer to what is your process for processing? What is your process for Pels? What is it? How do you guys systematically take in Pel? Take in feedback. Pel post-event letter should have defined that way earlier. What is your systematic approach to taking in that feedback and turning it into actionable things, action items? How do you do that? And most places don't have an answer to that. And you need an answer to that. Those are incredibly critical things. And then lastly, the other thing I think that really depresses Pels is that while you can write a shitty Pel, while you can absolutely be a huge asshole when writing a Pel, and I've talked about this on the show, far too many staff members do not know the difference between somebody being an asshole and somebody clearly stating their criticisms that you have asked them for. And so a large number of staff members across multiple games in multiple regions have, gone on very long tirades about shitty Pels and the negativity in there. And as a result, having talked to players are now incredibly gun shy, and I guess it depends on your area, incredibly gun shy about writing anything negative in a Pell because they're like, I don't want to be retaliated against or be thought of as one of those shitty Pell writers. And so they won't put in honest feedback because, frankly, a lot of staff members are not capable or willing to handle it. And I think that is also part of the lack of actual process. What happens? Staff members read the Pell. Maybe they read them all. Maybe they read some of them. Maybe they read the one, parts of whatever. There's some sort of version of it. And then they don't have any way to deal with what they've gotten. They don't have a system. And so they've just got their feelings and their ad hoc approach to everything. So these three things, I think, make people write fewer Pells. Not everybody. Certainly a lot of people will Pell forever, and some people really love Pells. But there's a group of us that it has absolutely caused less Pell writing or less effective Pell writing because it's, and I've had the conversation in my living room with my friends about how they won't put negative things in Pells because they're worried about hurting people's feelings. And again, these are not assholes. They're not writing mean things. They're just being like, this is a thing that troubled me. This is a thing that I wish could have gone differently.
Well, if they're assholes, they wouldn't have had any issues with hurting people's feelings. They'd have been like, I'm going to tell that asshole how I feel.
Right. They wouldn't care. Right. They wouldn't care anyway, right? So they're not writing in any of the I wish this could be improved stuff. So it's effectively like they're not writing Pells. They're just writing 5-star iTunes reviews in hopes of getting a credit or something. Like, it doesn't, you're losing. Those are the things. So I guess conversely, just flip all of that around. 1, learn to take constructive, polite, well-reasoned criticism and learn from it and figure out how to do better. 2, have a system. What is your system of transforming a Pell into an actual item that you do? Right? How do you turn it from words to action? How do you analyze? How do you evaluate? What is the process for all of this? And then 3, some way to communicate back to players. And this was a tough one. And it's something I've been pondering and trying to figure out is how do you tell a player, hey, Bill, got your Pell, read it, appreciated the feedback. And instead of making that a form, how do you make that not a form letter, right? Because if you just have an auto reply, I don't know. I mean, by the way, an auto reply is actually better than nothing. But how, because it shows you cared enough to at least set up an auto reply. But how do I say that, personalize it to you, and not spend 500 hours of my life dealing?
Snapchat.
Depending on the size of the game.
That's the answer.
Send. Something, right? It's like something. Publicize. Maybe you have a Pell. Maybe you have a staff meeting devoted to Pells, and you at least publicize. Hey guys, you look on your LARPs. I'm just off the top of my head. Maybe you just make a public post in your Facebook group for your LARP that's like, hey guys, yeah, tonight we're doing our Pell meeting. Cool, just so people know that you've carved out time to at least systematically approach this. Tell them the process. By the way, be like, hey, this is how we handle Pells. So we take the Pells in. And Bill reads them first because, we do have to, we do recognize that there's going to be a very, very small minority of people who are going to write Pells that may be a little bit mean. And so he's going to screen them first. And 99% of them he just sends through. And then the 1% he'll contact the person and say, hey, I get your anger about this. Do you mind restating it? And then they'll submit it and then it goes through. And then it goes to the staff, and then we kind of parse it out based on, like, this person's good at personal character history stuff, this guy's good at module mechanics. I don't know, whatever it is, right? You just tell people. At least they feel like it's going somewhere.
All right, I think we're getting towards the end of our time, so let's try and lightning round some of these questions. So,
okay, sorry, that one I had a rant about that one recently with a friend.
So one is for you. You mentioned a podcast that ended that you wanted to talk about, Mirror Mirror. Do you recall wanting to talk about that?
Let's see. A while ago, you mentioned on the podcast Larpcast. I don't. Oh, Brad. So this is a question for Brad, and I'm trying to remember This is again my conversation earlier about my memory in this show. I mean, Mirror Mirror ended early. I can't remember what I would have wanted to talk about with it. Mirror Mirror had a lot of things, I guess, that we could have talked about, so I apologize because I don't know specifically what that was. Mirror Mirror was one of the wackiest LARP experiences you could ever run or play in, because of just how it was set up. Because it was sort of there was the on-world plot, and then there was essentially stargates to an infinite number of other fantasy worlds. and you could just staff were encouraged to like this is my world and I do whatever I want on my world and it doesn't have to impact the rest of the game. And so you essentially had like 13 LARPs in one.
So what we can do is we can
apologize.
We can add to the list of ideas. Patrick, I know you're watching this at this point in time.
Yeah.
Maybe not right now, but you're watching the VOD of it.
Right. But Brad, at some point, Brad, if you could just like, let me, if you remember what the heck it was what the context was, I might be able to give you more in a future episode.
Mirror. We should do a whole episode that's postmortem of Mirror.
We could. We'd have to get some staffers in because
all right. Next question. Here's the question. I understand throwing a LARP is difficult. What's the main reason they fail in making it happen? Failure to identify the scope. How much goes into a LARP? That's pretty much it.
Oh yeah, right. They don't know what they're in for, and then it gets. The other one is starting. I've known a billion people who all wanted to start a LARP, and what they do is they noodle around with some rules for a while, and they consider that LARP development. But they never actually take any tangible action that involves any level of personal commitment, right? Because you can tool around on rules in your spare time forever. Nothing about that is a commitment to the project. And so that first step of committing to the project in some way is the one that most people don't take.
The thing is, a lot of people like to LARP, and so their response is, "Hey, I like to LARP. Maybe I'll just like try and make my own LARP." Which, the same thing is if people are like, "Hey, I like to eat food. Maybe I'm going to try and learn how to cook." The first one that you do is going to be bad. I mean, unless you put a lot of time into it, training as staff and other people's games, if you think that you're going to do everything completely different, the first one's going to be bad, and that's not a measure of you. That's true of everything in life. The first time you try and draw something, the first time you try and create a podcast, episode 1, trust in staff. I won't listen to it because I'm sure it's probably a nightmare of an audio experience.
Oh God!
But, you have to practice everything to get good at it, and the first time that you do it, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
And what people do is they over-design, so they're trying to do too much with their first LARP. They don't identify the amount of scope that goes into it, and then when they fail, they're like, "Well, I quit. I'm never going to do this again." Like it's going to suck. The first one's going to suck. It'll get better.
Yeah. It's gonna sound a little strange, but I would almost recommend it. So this is one of those I kind of referenced it I think before in the previous episode, life lessons from LARPing kind of a thing, which is if your goal is to do some sort of large grand project, I highly recommend, aside from identifying and figuring out how to do that and starting, right? Doing the project now versus never doing the perfect project 100 years from now, right? But aside from that is do other projects because it teaches you how to learn and it gives you the confidence that you can figure out problems that arise. Doing Larpcast helps give me the confidence to run a LARP. Not because of the information in the show, though that certainly informs and improves my LARPing, but I have more of a track record of doing crazy kooky projects, and pretty much all LARPs are a crazy kooky project. I now have a greater history of doing them, right? I've done Larpcast. I'm doing Larpcast. Therefore, I feel confident that when I create a LARP and bad stuff or obstacles come up, I'm like, oh, I'll just figure it out because I know that I'm pretty good at figuring it out because I have a history of figuring it out. So just a little side thing, and that's true for everything. The more you just kind of succeed at smaller things, the more you'll feel confident about bigger things.
Well, I think we should try and wrap this up then because
yes.
Let's just do a couple of quick plugs for you guys. I want to thank everybody for attending this. As always, if you want to help us out, you can help by either helping us at patreon.com/larpcast. Anything that you can do for that helps us along with the podcast. We're getting close to Mickey and I actually meeting in person. 100 episodes, 6.5 years, still haven't met in person. Additionally, if you don't have the money to spend or you're not interested in that, conversation at facebook.com/larpcast. That helps, and just tell people about the show.
Yeah, you got a LARP community you're a part of. Get them to listen. We love to have people listen to our words. if you've got show ideas, send them over to Patrick at pdennett, P-D-E-N-N-E-T-T, pdennett at gmail.com, subject line show ideas. Patrick, a longtime friend of the show and marvelous keeper of our spreadsheet of things that we have talked about and will talk about in the future. So send him your stuff. We're Amazon affiliates. So if you go to larpcast.podbean.com and there's an Amazon link, click it, make it your bookmark for Amazon. We get a percentage of everything you buy without it costing you anything. So that helps keep the lights on. So let's see. Do you have comment to facebook.com/Larpcast and forgive my terrible comprehension of how Facebook manages its business pages. Bill,
I do.
Have,
so this one is
next
this is a
level
LARP that anybody can do it.
I'll leave
they want. So the goal is to jump onto a live chat and ask a bunch of questions about Nero. And you get extra points every time that you use words like old school, waylay, or Barnes and Nobles. And the winners get extra chats that can be used at any LARP of their choice, but some limitations may apply. And you may have to buy the right to use those chats. And the name of this game is Trolling. So
there you go. a worthy entry into the next level LARP.
But in all seriousness, thanks guys for showing up.
We do appreciate having you guys there. I'm guessing. So we got Larry. We had Brad and Shaughnessy and Kevin and Larry and somebody going by Bill Bixby, which I'm guessing was Al. And then there was somebody else who was at least listening for a while. My chat window is not letting me scroll up to where I need to do to thank that person as well. And thank you everybody else who was listening live. We appreciate you guys joining us and contributing. We love our listeners and we love doing the show. So thank you for being with us for 100 episodes.
This has been another episode of Larpcast, all about the 100th episode of Larpcast and the crazy road that we've traveled.
Yeah.